It's time to downsize. We're going from this to this. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Addicted to Gear. Today we're talking about downsizing. That's right, we're going to be downsizing my pedal board that I have here. This is my trusty pedal board. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of cluttered pedals here. And I've been using this pedal train pedal board for quite a few years. It's served me very well, extremely durable, solid. It's a little heavy, but it's a little bit too large for what I need. So I'm hoping that I can fit all these pedals onto a smaller pedal board. And the pedal board that I'm going to be trying to fit all these pedals onto is this one here. Now this is a pedal board made by NuX. It's called the Bumblebee. They have different sizes. This is the L. They also have a smaller size. I like this pedal board because it seems to be well built. It's a two-tier system. As you can see, you can put pedals on the top rack as well as the bottom rack. And what's even more important is that the bottom rack, not only can you put pedals here in the front, but it's got a secondary back area here, if you can see that, where you can put some pedals underneath. The idea is to take what I have on my existing pedal board and transplant it over to the other one. So hopefully I'll be able to fit all of these pedals onto that board. Now, before I get started, I wanted to say this is going to be, it might be a boring video for some of you people that are not interested in pedals or pedal boards. But for those of you that are considering building a pedal board of your own, it might be a good place to snag some ideas and see how you can squeeze the most out of the space on a smaller pedal board. So a couple of things I wanted to outline in this video. First of all, I feel that it's very important to mention whenever you're building a pedal board to start off with a very good power supply. That's this box right here. I'm using a Decibel 11 power box here, and it basically provides all the power, clean power, to my pedals. And that's super important because if you don't have a good quality power supply, you're going to get noise, you're going to get possibly not enough power to your pedals depending on what kind of power they need, because some pedals require more than just 9 volts. So depending on what you're using, a good quality power supply is a must. Now, other than that, what I've come to learn in my experience is that if you want your pedals to stay put and not to fall when you do stuff like this, you need to anchor them down properly. Now, what I do with my pedals is I use this product from 3M, and this is called Dual Lock. It's like Velcro, but it's like Velcro on steroids. It's extremely expensive. I'm not gonna lie to you guys and tell you it's cheap. It's not cheap at all, but a little goes a long way. And once it's anchored onto your pedals and pedal board, those pedals will stay put. The great thing about using Dual Lock is that you can rip off the pedals over and over again, and it doesn't weaken the actual bond. These are plastic teeth that basically mesh together and mesh together really strongly. Now, when you buy this stuff, you might be tempted to buy Dual Lock that is not made for outdoor purposes. That's not what you want. There's different grades of this, and depending on the grade that you use, the teeth will actually be shorter or longer. The shorter teeth will come off easier, the longer teeth will not. So I go with the longer type, and it's not cheap. You can buy this on Amazon, you can buy this on eBay and other places. You got to look around, but they're pretty expensive, but it's worth it. Another thing that I feel is super important when you're trying to maximize the space on your board is the connectors between the pedals. Often I see people using connectors that are bulky or have bulky ends to them. Those are not what you want. You want the slim taper type. And there's a couple of companies making these. I recently discovered that Donner is making a set like this, and They're, again, not inexpensive. They're about $16 for a set of 3. But they're well worth it, and I'll explain to you why if I can get the Velcro off these things. So these are relatively short. You don't need long ones unless you're doing a run from one end of the board to the other end of the board. Short ones will work best because they are compact, they don't take too much room. You can get the pedals a lot closer than you can with normal connectors. Now, are these going to be durable? We don't know yet. I haven't tried these before. This is the first time I try these. But honestly, if you don't necessarily plug and unplug your pedals over and over again, these should last you a long time. So step 1 is to remove these pedals from the old pedal board. I'm going to recuperate the dual lock that's already on these pedals because I want to maximize what I'm using because it costs a lot. We're going to apply the dual lock to the NuX Bumblebee, and we're going to start laying out the pedals to make sure that we have them in the right place, and then we're going to hook everything up. So let's get started. Okay, so the best way to do this is to get your hands dirty, get down on your hands and knees and start ripping out the pedals. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off all of the connectors because we don't need these anymore. We're going to be replacing it with the thin connectors, and you can see just how much space the connectors take between the pedals. Sometimes you have to actually move the pedals to be able to take out the connectors, and that's what I want to try to avoid. I like to pass the cables underneath the pedals when I can, just to keep things clean and uncluttered. But sometimes you basically run out of space because things are a little bit too tight. So as you can see, I'm having a hard time pulling this one out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disconnect the pedal first so I can pull out the connectors. Now you can see that while I'm pulling the pedals off the dual lock, I can just rock the pedal and it comes off. That's the cool thing about the dual lock. It's very hard to pull the pedals off vertically, but if you just rock them a little bit, they come off quite easily. Okay, so now that we have most of the pedals off of the pedal board, this one has some zip ties on it that I need to remove. So we'll do that. And as you can see, what I did here with my power supply is I numbered all of the connectors so that when they're passed underneath everything, you know which one is which. The reason I do that is because some of the connectors are supplying 9 volts, some of them are 12. And so you want to make sure that you're plugging in the right ones to the pedals that require that kind of power. I'm going to take a scissor now and cut off the tie wraps and basically get the rest of the pedals off the board. Okay, so now that we have the pedal board in place, what I like to do is try to figure out firstly where everything needs to go. So what I like to do is to dry mount all of the pedals. So I can see exactly where everything should fit before I actually Velcro everything down. Sometimes you have to move things around a couple of times till you find exactly the right place. So this is why I like this pedal board, because you can actually put the pedal underneath, the power supply underneath, and still have access to all the other pedals. So normally what I do is I'll go in from the tuner first. I like to put the delay effects, so the modulation effects normally go on the bottom. I like to have my overdrive, my distortion pedal, and my booster pedal at the top of the chain. And I normally also will put in, if it fits, the EQ, the booster, kind of thing like that. And then on the other level here, I put my modulation effects. So I can technically squeeze in another pedal. I can put a flanger in there maybe, but often it's overkill. We have 8 connections here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 pedals is the max that we're going to be using in this particular instance. It looks like it fits, but we're going to make sure by plugging in the small connectors that we have here. We want to make sure that we're not going to be tight for space. So I'm going to do a dry run. In the case where you have connectors that are going to be mounted on the top, space is not really a big issue. When they're mounted on the side, however, then space becomes more critical. So we're going to open up the other bag. And for those of you wondering if there's a special name for these things, they're just called the Donner flat cables, I guess. Premium instrument cables. That's how they're called, but they're the flat ones. They come in packs of 3. And I think they have bigger packs as well. The way I run my rig is that the out of the top level, so the output of the top level here will go to the front of the amp. This bottom section will go into the effects loop. We're going to have a send and return from these guys. So all we really have to connect are the in-between connections. So let's do that. And I go into mono, just because I'm already away. Right? So basically, they will be laid out like so. I'm actually put these closer together. Right? And then, so the in and out of this is in the effects loop. My guitar goes into here, goes through all these pedals, goes to the front of the amp. Pretty straightforward. So the next step in all of this is to place the dual lock on the back of every pedal, or the ones that are missing the dual lock, and apply the dual lock directly to this guy here. I like to be able to get at least 2 rows of dual lock. Some people will use just 1. I prefer to use 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to string a complete dual lock strip on the middle bar here. And I think the last 2 bars here should do the trick. And I'll do the same thing here. Probably just put the last 2 bars on this guy as well. So let's take everything off and do that section. So I'll basically rough measure the strips, cut them, and apply them. We'll try and make 2 of them as close to the same length as we can. All right. The thing is, if you have a dog like I do, dog hair is never a friend of Velcro's, so you're basically gonna have to deal with it. Unfortunately, not much we can do with that. So we are with the dual strip spring. We're gonna do the same for the bottom side here. We're just gonna clean it off so that you don't get dust and stuff in there. Once you have your pedalboard set up nicely, with the dual lock, you can easily pull the Velcro off if you need it. And pull the Velcro off, pull the pedals off if you need to, so you can replace them however you like. Now both sides of the dual lock is not the same. You have a more dense section of dual lock on one roll and a less dense version of the same thing on the other. So you want to make sure when you're doing this that you put the right side on the pedals. As you can see here, most of my pedals here have the coarser dual lock on there. So the next thing would be to put a couple of little strips of the dual lock where we want the decibel power supply to be. And here I'll only put roughly, I don't know, 6 inches, 7 inches. That should be enough. About this much. We're going to use tabs work out. Alright, so here we're going to place it roughly in the middle. You can't see very well, but roughly in the middle. That should be the trick. So that's probably, and just make sure I'll take off all the plugs here for the time being. Just so I can make sure that's aligned properly. That's a little tight, but that's okay. Because once it's pressed down, you don't want it to come off. So I'm just going to push it in as far as you go, and then press down, and just lock it in place. It's not easy sometimes because you have a lot of pressure on it. Make sure it's locked down though. Since my finger fat don't fit easily in the space to push it down, I'm going to try and grab it from the underside here. Sometimes you might have to find some tools to make it work. I'm going to try to push it down here. There we go. You can hear it when it's locked in place because it does have like, it does make like a clicking sound. All right, so we're good. These little slots here, they will allow you to play around with the wiring if you need it. In this case, I don't really need it, so I'll just put it aside. All right, so I have some pedals like these cheap Joyo pedals here that don't take this dual lock very well because the back of the pedals are made of plastic and they'll rip off. So I try to avoid to put the dual lock over the battery compartment, as you can see here. The other pedals are fine, but I did notice that as a kind of a drawback to using these pedals. You want to make sure the dual lock is engaged. And I try and push them closer together if at all possible, so that I have enough room to put them all on the board, like so. Okay. And then the final one goes in at the end. Of course, put in the connector first, and then press on the pedal. I don't mind if these ones overlap or stick out a little bit because these are going to be going into my amplifier, front of the amp. All right. So that's the idea there. You can get the wires out of the way pretty clean. Not too bad. We'll do the same thing with the other run of pedals. Now these pedals had somebody else's Velcro on it, the cheaper kind, so I'm going to take those off first and then glue those down. Okay, so you really, I'm going to peel these guys off. Here, one. Now we got to put in all these guys back where they were. So this stuff takes a little bit of time. It's kind of boring. So let me set that up. So the next step would be to plug it in, plug in the power supply, make sure everything works by turning on all the switches, make sure they're all working. Now what we'll do is we'll plug in the effects loop into my amplifier, and we'll give it a little twirl to see if it's how it sounds. So I normally plug in the guitar right into the buffer tuner. And I take these angled connectors and I plug them into the send and return of the effects, the modulation effects here. Again, I wait the model, and that's going into my effects loop. And of course, the output of my distortion and boost and EQ is going straight to the front of the amplifier. So we'll plug that in. We'll fire up the amplifier. So you can hear the delay. That's working fine. Obviously, the reverb now, the levels are way too high. So we're going to play with that. I will put it on a plate reverb. So that's working nice. So let's, we have a lot of gain from the amplifier right off the bat, so I don't really need the gain pedals, but I'll use the boost. So that sounds pretty good as it is. And of course you can tailor the sound a little more if you use whatever EQ pedal you have on your board. So that sounds pretty good to me. And those are the basics. I mean, you don't really need anything more than, you know, the modulation effects. The most important pedals on this board, I think, are my tuner, the EQ pedal, and the boost. Everything else is just like flavoring. But if you have a good amplifier, some of these pedals you don't actually need. But in my case, I always like to use a little bit of reverb, a little bit of delay. I hardly use any chorus. I use it time to time, but really the most I get out of the pedals on my board, the ones I like to use the most are the carbon copy and the Hall of Fame. Now, the sounds that you're hearing are coming through my lapel mic, so they're not going to be the best because I didn't intend this to be a sound overview of my pedals. It's just really how to put together the pedal board and lay it out. So I think that going from the previous pedal board into this one with the dual levels definitely saved me some space and really makes all the pedals accessible very easily. Whenever you want to tap your pedals with your foot, you don't have to worry about having to move too far in between the pedals. So I like this board a lot. So there you go, guys. The NuX Bumblebee pedal boards look really well built to me. I think I'm going to get a lot of pleasure out of using these boards, and they look good too. So, you know, a nice compact double-decker pedal board like this will go a long way in keeping things more space efficient and easier to manage. And I've been meaning to do this for a long time. I've just been putting it off, but I'm glad I got around to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and didn't find it too boring. I know some of you geek out on this stuff, but others might just find it a little too dry in terms of content. But I always like sharing these things with you because, you know, there might be a couple of things that you didn't think about doing, and maybe I can help you guys get some interesting ideas on how to actually set up your boards. So that's it for today. thank you for tuning in once again. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. If you want to tune into the live broadcasts that we normally do Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock Eastern time, that's AM, you're more than welcome to join us. This is on a regular basis, and we talk about everything under the sun that has to do with guitars, gear, pedals, and everything else. So please join us for that. It's a lot of fun. And if you're interested in helping the channel out, you might want to try and maybe pick up some swag. There's a host of things you can purchase to help this channel as well, listed below. So check that out. And that's it. So for now, guys, please stay tuned, keep rocking. We'll be back with a lot more content coming your way.